All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live from Atlantic City. I am Matt Rooney of Save Jersey, joined, as always, or at least as often as I can swing it, by my friend, co-host, partner in crime, sometimes unsolicited speaking coach, the one, the only, Dan Cerrucci.
Thank you, sir. Great to be here, and what an exciting conference, and I think you can see behind us the crowds and some of the excitement. We just got off an unbelievable session with a speech by Dr. Ben Carson, and I'm sure our guest is going to have a few things to say about that.
It was so good that Dan didn't have anything negative to say. He came out and he said that was public speaking, how it's supposed to be done.
Fantastic.
I got to tell you, as somebody who's written more speeches than I care to remember and coached an incredible number of speakers, well, I'll let this guy tell you about it.
Yeah, and this guy is someone who won't need much of an introduction for our regular readers, certainly not here in Atlantic County. He is Andrew Parker, who one of his claims to fame is he ran what had to be one of the longest races.
Very exhausting.
Exhausting. In the history of New Jersey. I guess you originally were on the ballot in 2020, right?
Yes.
And the election was finally decided how many months later? Let's do some math here.
Let's do the math on it. So this last November,
right.
This last November, so that had to be, 2 years?
Unbelievable.
2 years of running for a race, if you put it all together?
Yes, which, for those who don't remember, what ultimately ended up happening was Atlantic County has a ward system for its commissioner seats, and, as often happens in that office, the clerk at the time screwed it up.
Absolutely.
And the wrong ballots went to the wrong people in the wrong wards. Finally got resolved, though, and you're now an Atlantic County Commissioner.
Finally got resolved after countless hours talking to my lawyer and going to court and just dealing with continuing to run even though the campaign was over, the election was over, and just having to stay at it. It was extremely exhausting. There's so many times when, behind the scenes, a lot of people don't know, but I'll say it. There were times when I reached out to my opponent and said, listen, this doesn't make sense for anybody. It doesn't make sense for her. It didn't make sense for me. It didn't make sense for the voters in Atlantic County. It definitely didn't make sense for the taxpayers who had to, pay the bill for the thing. And so I reached out to her and I said, listen, I offered her a coin flip. And it barely made the paper. I said, listen, let's get a retired judge. I spoke to Denny Levinson. I spoke to a couple folks. They said, listen, it's a good idea. Let's see what happens. I said, let's get a retired judge. Let's meet over at the county building. Let's have him flip a coin. And listen, let it fall into Destiny's hands. And she loved the idea in the beginning, and I guess she spoke to her chairman, and then it decided it wasn't such a great idea. So I think in hindsight, she maybe she wishes now that she would have taken the deal.
Yeah, right. Seriously. I bet she does. And you've hit the ground running, which doesn't surprise anyone who knows you. And now you're here at, as Dan said, is a pretty excited summit. Everyone seems to have a sense that good things are ahead for Republicans in South Jersey and beyond this year. Now, you're very active with a group who you can kind of sort of see the booth behind us, Blexit.
Absolutely.
And there was breakfast here for Blexit this year, very large presence. Still relatively new to the scene, though. Can you maybe explain to our listeners and our viewers what exactly Blexit is all about, why you believe it's so important?
Well, Blexit is, for those who don't know, Candace Owens. It started with Candace Owens, and so Blexit started out through Candace, and I remember hearing Candace speak early on before anyone really knew who she was, and I said, I don't know who this woman is at the time. I didn't know who she was. I said, but I got to go check her out. I got to go see her in person, see what she's about, and I went down to Baltimore, Maryland. She had a rally down in Baltimore, Maryland, And I went down to Baltimore, Maryland, and I got to see her live and took some pictures with her and got to talk with her offline. This was before she was a big megastar. I probably couldn't get her now. But
yeah, there's probably a line around
there's
the
a
block
line
to
around the
book her to
block.
speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I started getting involved then, and I tried to reach out to her a few times, but I said, this is exactly the kind of energy that we need in New Jersey. And so from that point forward, I just started behind the scenes working to try and bring Blexit and bring Candace Owens to the state of New Jersey. And I pretty much begged and harassed. And so I started with the group. They started out, and it's a little different when you're an elected official because we really can't officially be a part of certain things. We have to kind of be a part of it. So my role with Blexit was, it's more behind the scenes than anything else. But they know that I support them with everything they do. And what Blexit is, it started out with blacks exiting the Democrat Party is what it stands for.
Right.
It's grown since then into so much bigger, where we have so many members and we have so many different nationalities that are just coming in, and minorities in general, almost the big tent kind of idea, that are coming in and saying, whoever is tired of what's going on with the Democrat Party, there's a home in Blexit. Blexit has since kind of formed its own identity away from Candace, because we all know Candace can wake up in the morning, just like our president, our Donald Trump at the time, could wake up in the morning, tweet something, say something, and so
all over the universe.
And
She
it's
has
all
a
over the universe.
reputation as
She
a
has that
provocateur.
Yes, she does.
Yes, she is.
And listen, and she's doing a great job of it. But the organization decided that, in order for it to grow, it's based the way that it needed to. It had to formulate its own identity away from whatever she tweeted or whatever she said. And so since Blexit has kind of formulated its own identity, and it's nonpartisan, it's not political, they don't endorse anyone, and it's a grassroots organization that's going out into the minority communities and doing the work, just being seen in the community, whether it's food drives, clothing drives, whatever, educational pieces, Black history programs, whatever the community needs. Blexit is going out and doing the work and being seen on the grassroots on the ground. So that's kind of what we're doing. And so they have a table back there. And
giving Black Americans a choice, which I know one of the common threads of this weekend. And I brought it up during my panel, and I've heard it from other panelists. So often the reason why Republicans lose the black vote or fail to make progress, they don't show up and ask for it.
That's right. And that's part of, we were having these conversations all weekend, and I had another interview, and that's pretty much the basis of what I talked about. And the question was asked to me, well, what do the Republicans need to do? I said, show up. And don't show up 2 months before November. Don't show up during campaign season, during election season. Show up during the off season and just be present and ask questions. Sit in the room and ask a question, ask a few questions. Just say, what do you need? What do you love in your community? What don't you love in your community? And just listen to people talk. Let them speak. Let them answer. And then at the end, we have to reflect on what they said, show that we care enough to try to come up with some solutions. It's not really a difficult process. It's not like, rocket science. And if we can prove that, we have the representatives that care enough to try to come up with solutions to people's problems, then the Republican Party will start to get more minorities involved in the Republican Party, and they'll see the Republican Party as the party of solutions, and not just rhetoric, which the Democrat Party has turned to. You look at what the Democrat Party has been since we've been, the African American and minority community has been loyal to the Democrat Party. What have we gotten for our return on investment? And year after year after year, I continue to say that, to the minority community. Okay, we've supported the Democrat again. Congratulations, they won. Now go back into our community and tell me what has improved.
What have you gotten other than further reliance and dependency on the government?
Absolutely.
That seems to be what you get. You get further dependency on the government. I thought it was interesting, you probably noticed this, that when Dr. Carson just spoke in the other room here a while ago, by the way, he spoke to a packed house, he talked about values, And he, in my mind, as I was watching it, he talked about the core values of the African American community, his
Absolutely.
values growing up.
Absolutely.
Tell us what some of those are that can resonate for the Republican Party.
You know, if you look into the history of minorities, even talking about going all the way back to Reconstruction, you know, and post-Reconstruction, what African Americans wanted was to be free. We wanted to have individual rights of each person to be free to work for themselves, to establish their own reality,
Right.
whatever that was.
Right.
And you know, if they wanted to be business owners, then God bless them. If they wanted to, you know, work in a factory, then God bless them.
Right.
It's just the ability that we get to be in control of our own destiny.
Right.
You know, our own fates. You know, you think about it from coming from a people that went through suffrage, you know, in slavery. Okay, so we didn't have that ability. You know, we were told what to do, where
Right.
to be, what we could say,
Right.
what we couldn't do. So
You didn't want to be enslaved all over again to the government.
That's right. We didn't want to come back into a new system and be enslaved by the government. And,
Right.
and I think that's what the Democrat Party has done. And you look in our communities now, and the dependency, they've literally almost brainwashed our community into that level of thinking again, where we're dependent on someone else to come in and save the day for us. But we don't need anybody to save the day for us. We just need a fair system that's equal, that's equitable, that gives us the opportunity to go out here and rise to the level of our own endeavors or our own accomplishments. So,
And pursue the American dream.
That's right.
Dr. Carson, one of the things he said, this was a great line, he said, you notice there's only an American dream. Did you ever hear of the French dream, the Canadian dream?
that's right.
You know, the whatever,
No,
Argentinian dream,
it's a fair point. I mean,
American
and that's
dream. That's the one that everybody knows about. The whole world knows about the American dream.
it's what distinguishes us from the rest of the world.
Yeah,
That's right. And another thing you said, you don't see people that are immigrating in, coming in and saying, don't come in here, don't come, don't follow me. No, they're saying, come, because there's opportunity. There has to be something good that our country is doing that makes people want to come into our country in the numbers that they want to come in here. You know, so
No one's trying to break into Russia.
no one's trying to break into Russia. No one's trying to break into Russia.
especially now.
Especially not.
So
You're doing tremendous work, though, and the risk of being corny, I think it needs to be said. I mean, to be a Republican, period, in a state like New Jersey and be outspoken, it takes some degree of courage because you're going to get some
Absolutely.
pushback and get ridicule.
Absolutely.
What Black Republicans are doing is nothing short of heroic, and I think that the consolation for the sacrifices you're making, because you get a lot of shit from both inside and outside of the community. A lot of times it's white liberals
yes,
that say horrible things.
absolutely.
I think the upside is we're starting to see a change. Things are really different. People are waking up. And it may not be today or tomorrow, but I think in coming cycles, the Democrats' vice grip on Black America, it's loosening.
It is loosening, and one of the charges, the final charge that Ben Carson charged us all with, is to have that kind of courage, not for ourselves, but for the next generation, for the generation following. Maybe it's my grandchildren that will reap the benefits of what I'm doing today. Maybe it's not me. You know, maybe I'll be ridiculed for the remainder of my days for choosing to be a Black Republican educator at that in the state of New Jersey. So maybe I'll be ridiculed. I'll never see glory, but I'm fighting for the next generation and the generation following. And so we're all charged with creating an America that will help create a world where the next generations can come up and have it better than what we had it. At least have it as good. And what we see now, it's not as good. It's not. And I feel for my students, my children,
Very
my
scary.
biological children, because they're not growing up in a world that's better than the world that I grew up in. And it's unfortunate.
We say, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? That's the old saying in politics and elections. But, I mean, right now, can anyone say they're better off today than they were 2.5 years ago?
No, we
You
cannot.
can't.
Yeah.
They've made everything worse, but it's going to get better. and you're one of the guys leading the way here in South Jersey. Andrew
you, sir.
Parker, an inspiring guy.
Absolutely.
He'll never say it about himself, but we're going to say it. We appreciate you being a friend, and stay in touch.
Listen, I
Keep us in
appreciate you
loop.
always being a friend of mine as well. Both of you too. I
Thank you.
appreciate what you're doing to wake people up and educate them, because it starts with education. And I say this as an educator.
Oh, look at this guy behind you. He's helping wake people
Oh
up.
man, I want to interrupt you guys. No, we're just about done, Congressman.
You're allowed to interrupt anytime you want. Now, Ron, I'm not so sure.
Yo, Ronnie.
Do you have a minute to chat?
And that's a great segue to the congressman who had the courage to switch parties.
We're talking
Yeah.
about
My
talking
good friend
about
Robert.
courage.
Who had the courage to switch parties and in a Democrat state.
Yeah.
You know, and no one thought that he would do it. You know, why would he leave the Democrat Party in a Democrat state? Everybody thought he was nuts, and look at him now. You know, he's helping lead the charge of what the new New Jersey will be. And so with that, I guess I should give him a headset and let you talk to the congressman.
If you must,
I
I mean,
must.
we love Jeff, but when this guy talks, it just draws you in, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it's great. I don't want to interrupt.
I'm not trying to start trouble. I'm just saying one day he might have your job. I don't know, Congressman. A long time from now, but
As long as I'm ready to go. Here you go, young man. Thank you so much. Anybody that calls me young man, I love it.
Here you go, Congressman.
always a pleasure, my friend. He really is great, isn't he? It's good to know that you've got such a great team.
It is. It's amazing. We have a lot of young talent, a lot of people that also have institutional experience, so have really learned a lot and can help people that are a little newer and a little younger, give them some of those experiences too, yet make the change that is so necessary. We've never needed change more than now. We absolutely can't keep going down this path. It's so bizarre, it's so bad, it's so hurtful to our nation that if we do, we'll destroy it.
It's one of the themes of the weekend that you used to say, well, you know, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? That's the old saying that comes up at election time, particularly in relation to presidential campaigns. Now, no one can say they're better off than they were 2 years ago. Between how
Even
Democrats
1 year
have,
ago.
1 year ago, yeah. Between how Democrats mismanaged COVID, Joe Biden and his administration's continuing incompetence, the radical agenda. We see all of these women behind us, strong Republican women, that I guess we can't define what that means now, according to our next Supreme Court justice. It's Looney Tunes now. You've probably never been more glad you left the Democrat Party.
Yes, well, God was good to me. It was really, for a while, time for me to leave, but everything was fortuitous and it came together, and President Trump was so nice to actually usher me in. I've never been happier politically. I am at home, and I state what I believe, and I push in what I believe, and I'm helping others as well. So I'm full of pride to be here, to be honest.
No, but maybe
In a good way, good pride.
Maybe,
Good pride,
Congressman,
yeah.
you can answer a question we've been tossing around. Maybe you're the ideal person to answer it now, having made the journey that you
Okay.
made, and so recently. What is it that distinguishes Republicans from Democrats? What is it that makes us Republicans?
Oh, there's so many things. So if you want to start, I would start actually with the belief in the Constitution, that the Constitution is a document that has to be followed, that it is important, and that it is the best document ever in the history of the world. It really is. The second piece, I would say, is a belief in freedom. A real belief that Americans do have, and America maintains, is that every person of every race, color, and creed has the right not to have success, but to have opportunity. I think what distinguishes America is the fact that individuals are willing to sacrifice, and you heard that in Ben Carson's speech today when he spoke about some of the sacrifices of Americans. And when you hear it, D-Day, when all these battles, when literally they knew they were going to die, they knew they were going to pass, they knew they weren't going to go home and see their families, yet they were willing to do that. I think the differences are that we encourage and allow people to excel. So people have the opportunity. whether it's entrepreneurial endeavors or whether it is in the way they raise their family or the way they pray to their God or whatever it is, they have that opportunity. And that's just a very few things. America is this amazing, phenomenal place. I mean this sincerely. It breaks my heart when I see what's going on right now. I want people to know who are listening to this, people who care about America, this is the real thing this time. That's what I said in there. This is not, just another important election. They're all important. They are. There's a lot of elections that have been important. And politicians, we always say, this is a really important election. No, folks, this is the important election of our lifetime for sure, of many people's lifetimes. This is bringing America back. This is saving America. This is keeping the America we know and we love.
And it'd be a lot more fun and comfortable for you if you had maybe 2 or 3 more congresspersons from New Jersey alongside you, Congressman.
We're gonna. Oh, in New Jersey, yes.
From
I know.
New Jersey.
Yes, I am hopeful that we will. I know at least
3.
1. But yes, the more the merrier.
I'm dreaming the American dream. I want to see 3.
You got it.
Well, and he's been very supportive. And the thing that I've repeatedly said about Congressman Van Drew is that for a guy who was a Democrat, at least on paper, up until a few years ago, he's the best party builder in the entire Republican Party, all 21 counties. So you're not only working on your own re-election and helping Republicans up and down the ballot, you've also endorsed Republican candidates in other districts. We're going to talk to Darius Mayfield a little bit later today. It's really fantastic. Specifically Cumberland County, I wanted to ask you about that because that's one of the number 1 elections on any New Jersey political watchers maps this year. And you're predicting a victory, which is really good to hear because you know how important that is. Obviously, Congress is what it is, but control of Cumberland County would really, truly be
And they need the help.
They need the help, don't they?
They do. Cumberland County is the poorest county, as you know, in the state, and we need the help to bring it forward and to do things the right way. And
so what do Republicans do to move the effort in Cumberland County forward? Because you've won it as a Democrat and a Republican. So if anybody knows how to win in Cumberland County, it's Jeff Van Drew.
Well, I think we all come together, and I've certainly been supportive of, Mr. Albrecht who's running and Ms. Lodes and number 1. So any support I give, I am giving. Number 2, we've got to work even harder than before, and that means going out and really touching people, hitting the doors, doing all those things. Number 3, this is what is really going to help us this year. I believe we know that last year was a big red wave.
Right.
This is going to be a better red wave. Things are so bad, so, pardon my French, screwed up, that literally people who normally wouldn't vote Republican are going to vote Republican. He won last time, so it's just Victoria, and she's going to win. She almost won last time. She was right there. So she's going to win this time. I really believe it. I think she's going to.
And the environment hasn't gotten better for Democrats.
No,
God
it's
knows.
gotten worse.
It's gotten far worse. Yes. I think it's far worse than even in November. I mean, of course, there's no way to know for sure. I think if the election for New Jersey governor was tomorrow, Jack Ciattarelli probably would probably win.
Yep. That was a hurtful one. I like Jack a lot. I think he had that potential to bring the North and South together. He would care about the South still. It was one of the very important conversations I had with him, and I know that he would. But he's a moderate conservative, but he's palatable to people up north too. I'd probably be a bit much for him, but and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, but the revolution is happening in the South.
It is.
Oh yeah.
Really, there's something big happening down here.
You look over my congressional district. It's amazing how red the whole thing is.
It truly is. And when you think about how many Republican state senators there are now in or overlapping with your district, it's tremendous. What do you think the South Jersey Democrat machine did wrong more than anything else to bring about, I don't want to, call the game before it's over. It's looking like if it's not over the machine, they're getting beaten back to their natural boundaries in Camden County. What did they do wrong?
Well, in their desire and their lust to actually do things up north as well, in my opinion, to solidify even more, to move to the left more. I mean, I know a lot of people that are Democrats that were, or a few that still are, in that quote machine. I can't believe, and I am almost sure in my heart that they don't believe a lot of the stuff they're supporting. How could you? How could you believe that? Some of them are entrepreneurs, some of them are working people, middle class. How could you believe that? But they went over. I really truly believe, and this is not, Senator Sweeney did a lot, but in order to, again, to gain favor up north, which in the end he didn't gain. He didn't gain
Yeah, I mean,
end.
Sweeney was never looked upon as a radical liberal.
He wasn't.
I mean, he was a union guy. He was for the working people, so to speak. That's where he came from. Those
Got a
were
lot
his
of deals
roots.
with Chris Christie.
He was a
that
blue
the
Yeah,
left
he
dog.
did a
didn't
lot
like.
of
He was a
deals
blue
with the
dog
Republicans. But then I think when Murphy came in and the Democratic Party made this transformation, he had to make a decision, and he went that way.
He did.
He went
Look at the
too
bills
far.
he had to post.
Yeah.
Look at the bills they had to post.
I think it's
And you
one of
know
those
what?
great what-ifs in New Jersey political history. I'm not sure how he would have been received here, but if Steve Sweeney had decided to switch parties,
Uh-huh.
I wonder,
Well-
It is a wonder. It's only because he was so instrumental in a lot of important, very democratic initiatives, too.
Yes, that's true.
Remember,
Yeah.
I was a Democrat, but, Dick Cody used to say, I knew it was him, he used to say to the media all the time, they'd come to me and say, one of your fellow colleagues is saying, and that wasn't only one, there were others,
Sure.
that you're not even a Democrat, you're just a Republican. I said, yeah, I guess you could say that in a way, I don't know, but I consider myself, in those days, a blue dog Democrat. And I was the most conservative Democrat in the state Senate. And I was always good to Republicans, and I was chairman of my committee. There was no doubt if Chris Smith wanted to post a bill, or any Republican that wanted to post a bill, I always let them post bills. I was never one, no, you can't, or only tell you what's going to be on the agenda in the last minute, like what happens to us in Congress. We don't even know what the hell's coming down the pike. We see it at the last minute. It's a stack of 2,000 pages, and you gotta hope that you figure it out. And most of the time, you start to look and you peek in some areas and find there's a lot of garbage put in the bill, so you vote no. And I've had to do that a lot. I mean, I voted no against bills that were mine and then were abused and had other stuff stuck into them, had to vote against my own bill.
Isn't that
I was a
remarkable?
co-sponsor. It is remarkable, but there's, I can be a little flexible, but I'm not voting for bad stuff. I'm not doing that.
Well, also, you have a duty to your constituents to not
Exactly.
vote for something you haven't had a
Exactly.
chance to vet.
Exactly. So.
Well, things are continuing to change down here, and I'm thinking this is likely to be another really big year. If you're reelected, Gloucester County flips, Cumberland County flips, it'll be a red wave. It'll arguably, at least to some degree down here, be a Van Drew wave, Dan. It started with you and Mike Testa, and it's just continuing to roll.
Yep.
Fingers
That's a good
crossed.
thing. It is. They're fingers, toes, and anything that can be crossed.
I'm worried they're going to stay that way. They've been crossed so much recently. Congressman, you're always so
Thank you so
generous
much,
with your
Matt.
time, and it's great to see
I
you,
enjoy it, Matt. It's
especially
always a
when we're in
pleasure
your
to be on.
district
Yep.
where great things are happening.
I love it. I love it when you're here. So you all take care.
You too, Congressman.
Thank you.
That's Congressman Jeff Van Drew, everybody.
Yeah.
What's up, Alex? Oh, I just tell me who to bring on, and I'll do it. I'm better.
Okay, bring him on.
I'm better when someone tells me what to do in this venue.
I take the lead from you, Matt.
You take the lead from me?
Yeah,
Do I have
somebody
to-
tells you,
Why
and then
take
I
the lead
follow.
from
Do
Alex?
I have to put these on my head?
You do.
I met you on a
Yes.
Zoom call last
Yes.
year. So nice to see you again.
How are
Good
you
afternoon.
doing, Assemblywoman?
I'm doing well.
It's
doing
so
well.
great to be able to call you Assemblywoman.
Wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Very
It's
exciting.
still kind of,
Does
you
it
know.
sound odd to the ear?
in a very humble way. I don't always think of, I still feel I'm Marilyn, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Marilyn Paperno, Assemblywoman from LD11, Monmouth County.
But
so.
you're more than that. You're part of the Republican Revolution. Do you feel like you're part of a revolution?
Well, I guess, I'm definitely part of a Republican victory.
Okay.
And what I feel is a path forward into just getting back to basics and good common sense in how we govern and people that represent us. So
Yeah.
in that regard, if that's a revolution, then I'll take it.
It's a very interesting way you phrase that, because usually when you think of a revolution, you think, okay, we're going to burn everything down and we're going to
Exactly.
start something new. There is a revolution happening, but it's a return to
Maybe
basics.
it's more of a Renaissance revolution.
Renaissance.
Yeah,
Where we're trying to-
an American restoration.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Where
We're-
we're just trying to get back to what is fundamentally good in America, good with our people, and embrace that. Even just, if I could take a second, I was listening to the panels this morning. One was on education, one was on women's roles. But, when I grew up, my dad used to say, Harry, reading, writing, and arithmetic, the 3 R's. That's all you need to know, and that's what and I thought as my own children were going through, the dire straits, all of us with COVID and the lack of learning, my
Right.
gosh, we just got to get back to basics for these children, from K to graduate school. Our kids, we've got to get back to the basics and get them back on track for over 2 years of lost learning.
And you're,
Unbelievable.
and you're particularly, especially the kind of candidate and the kind of voter that this entire summit seems geared towards, because it's what everyone's talking about. We're
Right.
the suburban state.
Yeah.
The Republican Party has not done well in many suburbs in recent cycles.
Yeah.
But the overreach of government in the realm of education, in the realm of medical freedom,
Right.
essentially telling moms and dads how their house is going to be
Right.
ordered, structured, ordained, there's a pushback. And as I think you found that in your district, because your district, the 11th, is not a rock red district.
Not by any means.
There's parents from all across the political spectrum that are saying, enough, I'm done with this. We're doing something different.
right.
You're a suburban woman, so how do we
I
reach...
am?
Yeah, right. So,
Dan,
well,
we've been over this. We're
No.
not allowed to define woman.
Oh, gee, I forgot. Oh, well.
We're not biologists.
Oh, I better give this some more thought. I've been, especially not me. I failed biology, folks. That was one of the subjects I failed. But you have reached and won the votes of suburban women. You're in that category. How does the Republican Party reach suburban women, which is regarded as one of the big challenges?
I think for us, and hopefully Kim and I are winning proof of that, is it's basically just being yourself and being true to what you're passionate about, especially when it comes to family, schools, town, safety, business, and the affordability of New Jersey. New Jersey is unaffordable for everyone. There's not a day in your life that something could disrupt your happy place of I'm living well or I'm doing okay, but I know I'm always striving to do better. I need new tires. Depending on your car, that's anywhere from $500 to thousands. The next day, your kid falls at sports and you're taking an emergency trip to a dentist and it's thousands of dollars. The next day, you find out that there's a recital at a school or a new uniform and you're writing another check. There's always things that you have to make a choice. So life is always unaffordable. If New Jersey would give us the proper savings and policies that took the pressure of property taxes, school funding, the overload of small business taxes out of the equation, all of those life moments would be affordable.
Yeah, and
And
if we hadn't raised the gas tax, too,
Well,
by the way.
you know,
okay?
right, that's a
As
whole
if
game
gas
they
prices
play.
aren't high enough, and then we have Assembly and Senate members who voted for the raise in the gas tax. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Right, but even to that end, and I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole on that, but it's almost the buzzwords are putting out this idea. Oh, we need to create a gas tax holiday for New Jersey. That will not necessarily transcend to us at the pump.
Right, not at this point.
And
It's a
it could
Band-Aid at
become
best.
very detrimental in the the trickle down and up scale of economy. But
And then meanwhile, they're trying to shove electric cars down our throats. which-
Correct.
One of the many ironies that I think is lost on a lot of people. The way it's currently structured, if we all start driving electric cars tomorrow, we're going to be back to a situation where the Transportation Trust Fund is going to be bankrupt. because, you don't add money to that fund by charging your Tesla.
Right.
Right? They collect the tax when you buy gasoline. Nobody buying gasoline. That's math that even a lot of
Well,
our
I don't even
Democrat
think
friends can
Tesla pays
understand.
taxes, right?
Well-
As a company, and they're building a big space in Eatontown now, right? They took a showroom, but even to that end, so many New Jerseyans don't even know what Phil Murphy's master green plan is. And when you say things like, well, he wants to convert everything to electricity, they look at you as if you're the crazy person, you're the liar, you're the extremist, you don't know what you're talking about. And when you say no, everything, Phil Murphy, in his ultimate wisdom of wanting to follow this green path, and there's not one person I know, especially as a mom, that isn't conscientious of clean water, clean air, clean streets, safe, good communities, and a pollution-free environment. We are the cleanest country in the world. The lowest carbon emission is America. Who are the bad players? We already know. China, India, Iran, the countries that
The usual suspects.
now that we're getting oil from, right? That instead of having our own resources, natural resources.
Because somehow it's better for the environment if the hole in the ozone layer is over Venezuela instead of here. Once again, the Democrat conception of science is very interesting.
Right.
And it's constantly shifting.
So, but just getting back to that point about electricity and converting everything, most people don't know, they don't understand what it is, and when you start to really take the idea of whether it's the apartment you're renting, the home you live in an urban area, a rural area, a regular suburban or a more metropolitan situation, it's tens of thousands of your dollars that you're going to have to spend to convert your home to electricity. And you better get ready for your costs to quadruple and your power to brown out and black out, whether it's government controlled or anytime the wind blows the wrong way.
I'm so glad you're talking about this, because I think it's if there's one issue I think Trent Republicans need to dig deeper into, it's this energy master plan.
Right.
Not only because it's so egregious, but it's also so easy to understand. This is something that's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars. The BPU will not tell us what it's going to cost.
Right.
These are independent estimates from watchdogs that are telling us what it's going to cost. And like you said, it's far-reaching. It's going to eliminate your ability to have a gas range in your house if Phil Murphy gets his way. So, I mean, personally, I like to cook. I don't like my eggs on an electric stove. I'll do it if I have to. But it's going to change your life in so many little ways.
An old-fashioned barbecue and doing it outside if you can use coal.
Well, that's right. We're not allowed to. I guess we're going to be back to rubbing sticks together.
So, but
Right.
it's just some of these common sense, fundamental basics of just taking 2 seconds to sit and educate and make somebody aware. And I'm on the Infrastructure and Renewable Energy Committee, and it is fascinating, and it is wonderful that we are looking at all types of resources, of energy. Hydrogen is clean, gas is clean now, especially American material and product.
Nuclear energy is clean.
Nuclear is clean and can be cost efficient. It's come a long way since I was a kid.
Yes.
It shouldn't be such a dirty word anymore. There's a way to, and I have to say, our chairman is wonderful, and the whole committee, we're really trying to work together. Respect what we have, and instead of trying to shuffle out and just dismiss what's existing, see how we can keep improving on it and look into these new technologies. I'm fascinated by the idea of wave technology and using the ocean and those resources. I just am, personally. So I look
because you're a
forward-
reasonable person.
I
If
look
the
forward to
technologies
learning.
existed
Exactly.
and we could fully, transfer all of our energy needs to something that was totally renewable right now, why wouldn't we want to do
Right.
it? But it doesn't exist.
Right.
And we're finding out internationally right now what happens when you live in a fantasy, when you
Yeah.
pretend that you don't need reliable energy resources.
Well-
It's not just a cost issue, even though it's very important. It's a national security issue.
Yes, that too. And, just again, going back to some very elementary, basic questions and points, environmentally, what are we doing if we disrupt the oceans and the sea floors or go offshore we have the windmills right here, in Atlantic City
Yes,
already.
we can see them. From
Where
the
is
They're
window.
right outside
Where
my
and
window,
how?
and it really pisses me off.
Me too.
But
We must be in the same bad.
I was gonna say.
I guess we got the cheap rooms. So I can't afford it. But how are we storing that? These are the basic questions that nobody's sharing that information with us as hardworking taxpayer New Jersey families and businesses. How are you getting that energy from out there offshore to my home? What pipes under the seas, through the sands where our children play and the roads are, how disruptive is that process going to be? Where is this energy being stored? Or is it instant? These are the simple questions we just want the transparency of an answer to. Even going back to the idea of, okay, let's say the hand is forced, everything is electric. I rent. Now, what is my landlord going to do? Because he had to spend $30,000 to $80,000 easily to convert all of the apartments in, whether it's the brownstone, the duplex, the high-rise. You don't think that's getting passed on to you? Never mind if you pay that utility bill yourself anyway? That's number one. Same thing for the folks that live in rural or urban, the pride of being able to finally say, I'm a homeowner. Wait, what? My gas and heat is gone and I don't have $30,000 to convert my home.
Who does?
That's what I'm saying. Like who?
if we did, we wouldn't be in the room looking at the windmills.
That's right. Exactly. Agreed. But, so where are you? And then, so what do we do now? Oh, well, for the people that make X amount of dollars, we'll give you a one-time $250 check to apply towards your $10,000 home conversion? Come on.
Which is one of the ways in which the Democrats
We have
are just
to
so
stop-
hopelessly
right,
out of touch.
And that's the frustration for me as a new person. There are so many common sense formulas and ways, and Republicans have them, and I'm sure some of the more common sense Democrats have it too. They're just afraid to use their voice because they know they'll get primaried by their party, or they know they have to vote lockstep, or they'll never get a
The
bill.
environmental lobby
to
is
the floor.
extremely strong on the left.
Very strong in New Jersey.
And that's the shame of it, is nothing that really supports the New Jersey people gets done. I've witnessed it twice now, and
It has to have been eye-opening the past few
it's
months for you.
eye-opening. We've been in Trenton since basically February 28th now at some live committee meetings and voting sessions. Voting sessions are the least favorite experience and time for me in Trenton. Committees are wonderful. We truly are all good people sitting and debating and listening to testimony or conversation or why a particular person wrote a legislation and the thought behind it, and it's very thoughtful conversation, and I appreciate that, and we work well to be able to ask questions. But when you get to voting day, and it's as if all of that is just blown away because they all vote one way.
Right.
And I notice with the Republicans, we don't necessarily do that. And as a new person, I'm being very true to what Speaker Coughlin suggested and came in to share and motivate with us day one as new assembly members, when he said we are 120 representatives elected by 9.3 million New Jerseyans. We must think with care and consciousness about what is right for the people in our communities. And when I go into voting day and I see Democrat after Democrat, it doesn't matter if it's a woman, a man, black, brown, Muslim,
Right.
Asian,
Right.
voting yes, 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 or no, no, no. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way that represents your district.
There's not a lot of
And
thinking
shame
going
on
on.
you.
No.
Shame on you, because then you're
No.
not being true to the people that put you there to be their voice.
It's
You're not
lockstep.
representing.
It's lockstep.
And that's hurting me so badly.
The same
I
thing
don't-
is happening in Washington. The same exact thing is happening in Washington. And it's not good. This is not thought. This is dogma.
Yes.
And
That's
I-
what this
and I
is.
feel
It's
like-
dogma.
And I feel like this
the way
is
to put
why
it.
it's so important to get beyond the idea of being a woman or being a Republican. If my mindset resonates with you, in common sense and pragmatic thought to just truly want to help get New Jersey back into a place where it's affordable, it's a great safe place to live, every school and every kid has an opportunity to their best education, equity and equality for every student, 2 years of missed learning, and Phil Murphy's budget is cutting millions of dollars again from almost every town, and we're okay with that?
I'm not, you're not, he's
the
not. I think a
senator-
growing majority of New
The
Jerseyans are not
senator
okay with it.
in LD11 in my delegation is the education chair. He should be on fire with this budget. And I don't want to hear, well, this shouldn't be a shock. It's based on enrollment. It is a shock, especially after 2 years of lost learning. No child should be left behind or told, you're rich enough, your house is too nice, your zip code disqualifies you.
Some kids aren't worth more than other kids. Every kid should matter.
That's correct.
And I'll tell you, folks, if you didn't know it already, sometimes I don't want to shock anyone here. I get stuff wrong. And I don't predict a victory that ultimately ends up being a huge Republican storyline. Like, for example, I didn't predict Ed Durr's victory. I thought Steve Sweeney's days were numbered. I thought maybe you'd take another cycle.
Yeah.
The minute we interviewed you, Dan and I, back before the election, didn't we say it? We said she's going to win. We knew.
Thank you.
That's one I will take credit for predicting. Because we talked a lot about energy.
I didn't hear it.
Well, because you were too busy knocking doors.
Yes, that we were.
You were working, and it was obvious to me that you had exactly what we're talking about this weekend. You have that quality where you go, you are not afraid to ask someone for their vote, engage them, you listen more than you talk, even though you're very good at speaking. And so, even though you're a very conservative person, that's not what people in media identify with you. You're an individual, someone they see for their humanity, and then they're more willing to listen to you.
Right.
And that's
Thank
why
you
you're
for that.
successful and why we think you're going to continue to be successful.
Thank
and
you.
we really appreciate you making time
appreciate
for
it
us.
so much. Thank you. Can I
Because you're
say
definitely a
Matthew?
popular person here. Call me whatever you'd like.
Matthew's
Matt,
such
Matthew.
It's a beautiful name, and I believe it's one of the angels, right? It means it's the.
As I
angel.
remind my wife all the time, Matthew in Hebrew means gift from God.
That's it. That's what I meant.
There you
It's
go.
either an
So,
angel or gift.
She doesn't always
Antonio,
agree, but
Good to see you, right? All right. Thank
Pleasure,
you, guys.
Assemblywoman.
Thank you so much.
Jack's on next. The man, the myth, the legend. Her energy is just infectious, isn't
It's
it?
wonderful. It's wonderful. And again, she has tremendous passion. You can feel it. It comes through. And you can also feel the frustration that she sat in these committee meetings where she was led to believe everybody would be listened to, that there would be an open hearing, that all ideas would be entertained. And then they got onto the floor of the House or the Senate, the floor of the legislature, and the Democrats then all fell into line and voted in lockstep the way they were told to vote before any of the deliberations even began. I mean, come on, everybody, that's not democracy.
It's not a functioning system. If only we had had a Republican governor
Yes.
that could have injected a little, hello,
Here we are.
how are you?
Very well. Do I need the headset?
I think it's probably better if he has it, right? Not that Dan and I are usually hard to hear, but it makes it a little bit clearer.
Now, in the spirit of full disclosure, yesterday at lunch, I bought Dan lunch. Is that okay? Or does that mean I owe you a lunch?
It means it's one less lunch that I needed to buy for Dan, so I'm 100% okay with it. 100%. But what did Dan eat?
Well, that I didn't ask.
What'd you eat, Dan?
I had a Cobb salad because, like I said,
That's bougie.
I'm on a low-carb diet. And Jack said to me after he paid for the lunch, as he was leaving the restaurant, he turned around and he says, Dan, you should have had the lobster.
Matt, let me say that I've been very impressed with all the panels, but yours in particular, and you guys were great.
I
That was a great
appreciate that.
panel, So.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it very much. I thought that all the programming this year is very, very compelling, very substantive, great personalities, but also very, very knowledgeable people. And I always like to watch the audience and their body language. They're paying attention. And Ben Carson is great at the luncheon.
Amazing. Just amazing.
A master course in public speaking, and an important message, too.
forceful but very eloquent. And
Yeah.
we don't see too much of that anymore.
We don't. And it breaks my heart because we all know that it's nonsense, but some of the things that Democrats have said about him in recent years, particularly when he was still working for the Trump administration. I mean, if you didn't already know that the guy, his medical career is legendary, you can't be dumb and have his professional accomplishments. But just to hear the man speak, I mean, he to me is the kind of person the founders envisioned when they thought about public service. Somebody that didn't need the job. He wasn't running because he needed a gig. He ran because he achieved the pinnacle of his profession. He reached the pinnacle of his profession and then decided, you know what, I'm going to give back. I've got some ideas about how to do things better. So we need more like him. I got to say this, speaking of needing more people who have their heads screwed on correctly, you've been coming to these summits since they started doing them. This year is different. You mentioned the panels already. There is a different energy in this room, and I hope you don't mind my saying so. I'm not trying to pour salt on a wound. More than one person has said to me, I think if the election for governor was today, we'd be talking about Jack having won by 3 points. Things are moving in the right direction. Wasn't soon enough, but...
Of course, I'm disappointed by my loss, but I will tell you there is a great deal of energy because of the closeness of the race. Right. A lot of people who felt they could have done more or didn't do anything and should have, but also because of the great victories up and down the state. It was, in fact, the best night in 30 years for Republicans. You just had on Marilyn Paperno. What a great victory in District 11.
Tremendous.
We won in District 8. We won in 2. We won in 3. 2 months ago, I swore in the first Republican county commissioner in Passaic County in decades.
Isn't that remarkable?
And so the fact that we'll be looking to gain control of the commissioner boards in Cumberland and Gloucester this year is a really exciting development. And
you've consistently been one of the guys, I always give you and Tom Kane credit for this, that even before it was cool to come to South Jersey and campaign, you always came down and supported Republican candidates down here.
I was criticized, including by some Republicans, for having declared 22 months in advance of the election. By historical standards, that's a new record. But I knew...
I'm not going to lie, I didn't hear it live because I was in court, I think, when you were talking. But I had to go back and I had to replay it. Did Jack say he's in? But...
Well, I'm talking about last...
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, you don't waste any time.
No, but in so doing, it afforded me the time pay the respect and attention that South Jersey deserves. And let's not kid ourselves. Of course there was a strategy in that. We know that we don't get the old pluralities out of Burlington and Somerset and Morris. And South Jersey can help make up that difference. And boy, oh boy, did they.
And that was the challenge this year, that we did way better in South Jersey than we've done in a long time. You actually were very competitive in Bergen County,
yes, we were.
which is a county we've struggled in recently, which is a good sign because Bergen's so large and diverse. It was that string of formerly Republican counties, Somerset, Burlington, Morris to some degree, not just having the benefit of reflection of months, but also all the panels that you've been a part of today, you've watched all the conversations you have. Have you developed any new ideas that if you indeed run next time, which it sounds like that's what you're doing, what you might do differently from a messaging point of view?
Well, listen, I do plan on running again. And let me just say very, very proudly that many times, my conservative bona fides are questioned. And it's because I am very conservative in my values, but my rhetoric isn't always what some might call ultra-conservative. But New Jersey is a purple state. There's a reason for my rhetoric being what it is. And despite all that, I performed extraordinarily well in the reddest parts of the state.
No, the red parts of the state were very red. Your margin in ocean was pretty strong.
And South Jersey, we did well in places like Cape May. We did extremely well in places like Sussex and Warren.
Oh, you didn't lose because of the shore of South Jersey. There's no doubt about it.
But to your question, Matt, listen, we beat Phil Murphy on Election Day, Dan, by 216,000 votes on the machines. He beat me by 275 through the mail. And is there isolated fraud out there? There's been isolated fraud in elections for the 242-year history of this country. Is there systemic or widespread fraud that's dictating the outcome of statewide elections? No. They're just beating us at third-party ballot collection. And I've started a 501c polls.
I think the real voter fraud is Monmouth University.
That's the fraud.
Patrick Murray polling.
Oh my God! Please.
And then for this is my one little rant, and then I'm done. And then for the guy to then write an op-ed, basically saying maybe we should stop doing horse race polling. I mean,
Right.
where is the shame? There is
No.
undoubtedly would have been more investment and attention to your race from outside of New Jersey. But also, I am sure there's some people out there that thought, oh, here we go again, another Democrat victory because of those polls.
Now, this came
I
up
just
on
needed
the
to
panel,
say
the
that.
panel that you were on, Matt.
It
And
did.
I have to ask Jack, do you think that there would have been, that we wouldn't have had such a low voter turnout if the polls had been more accurate? Because we did have a rather low voter turnout, Jack.
Listen, I think it's a very reasonable assumption that if the polls had been more accurate as to what was truly the case,
Right.
we would have had a better turnout. Now, historically, our gubernatorial elections have a 35 to 40% turnout. Phil Murphy was elected 4 years ago with a 37% turnout. This was a 44% turnout, one of the best in history. But
Okay.
all along, I was saying we got to get to 45 to 48. 45 to
Yeah,
48.
but it was a 44% turnout with people having a long period of time to vote, everybody being able to vote by mail, right?
Early voting is a dud. The 9 days is not worth the expense or the inconvenience for our county governments. I'm okay with Friday, Saturday, Sunday before Election Day, but
Right.
9 days is just too much.
And you agree that the longer period of voting, the more opportunity there is for
Well, don't-
shenanigans?
I don't believe that because the longer period of in-person voting, it's very, very hard in my opinion. Some will
Okay.
say Dominion software, but let's not forget, Ocean County uses Dominion, and I got a record plurality this year out of Ocean County. It's the greatest
Yeah,
plurality.
I if anything, I thought that not only was there not any factual basis for the Kraken, but it distracted from the real issues with how we need to improve vote by mail and some of the other things going. Steve Lonigan, when he used to run for office, now he's taking a much-deserved break after many years in the arena, used to talk about institutional corruption. In other words, corruption that's legal. There's things about our system that are corrupted, but it's not illegal. It's not somebody in there stuffing a ballot box. It's procedures and policies which create the potential for mishaps and also reduce confidence in the system, which is, I think, something that held Republicans back in 2021.
Correct. And if people don't have confidence in the system, so listen, here's the great thing about last year's election. A lot of Republicans have woken up to the fact, holy mackerel, we can win these races.
Yes.
We beat the Senate president. We've got a Republican county commissioner for the first time in decades. Look at how close Jack came. We can win. And there's a lot of, and I mean this in a positive way, angry energy, like regret as to I could have done more, I didn't do enough. And
Oh, there's a lot of that. I've heard a lot of that this week. I mean, most people that are here work pretty hard, but feeling a lot of it. You hammered, and we've talked about this before, you hammered economic issues, specifically taxes. And not just because you're a CPA, you're a little bit of a policy wonk, and I mean that as a compliment. You get tax policy, you have very clear ideas about it. It's been a very difficult message, though, for Republicans to make stick in our elections. I don't think it's fair when people say you're not that conservative. I think you're pretty conservative. And you did talk a lot about parental rights. Definitely talked way more about taxes. If you could do it all over again, would you maybe recalibrated your campaign's messaging a little bit, spoken a little bit longer and louder about parental rights issues, since they seem to be connecting?
Yes, I think I should have spent more time on parental rights. But let me also say that those people who feel that their parental rights are being taken away, and they are, by these progressives, were already a very highly motivated voter.
That's true.
The one thing, if I could do it again, and this is on me, I need to make better inroads. We did well, but not nearly well enough in the black and brown communities whose value system
Right.
is in perfect sync with Republican values
Exactly.
with regard to parental rights, public education,
Right.
low taxes, better business environment for the small business owner, the Main Street
That's a really
person.
good point.
Okay, their value system and ours is perfectly in sync. And my experience has been is all you need to do is go there. When you don't go, they're going to vote Democratic because they're saying, oh, there they go again, those Republicans, right?
And it's a totally cool point. I mean, you and I have said this before, Dan, too. It's not that if you get elected governor, somebody that believes there's 300 genders, it's not that you're not going to represent that person. It's not that we don't want their vote. But ultimately, we recognize their priorities aren't Republican priorities. But there's that Hispanic family, that owns a family business, first or second generation. There's that hardworking black family that's in Atlantic County or my county or up north that shares our values in a variety of issues. I mean, candidly, as a Republican, that's the low-hanging fruit.
We have
Those
got
are
to
people
do
that should be
more
in our
to
column.
make that link. And one of the things that really impressed me about this conference, Jack, was if you look at the program, there were a lot more black and brown faces on the program, on the panels, as part of the whole. They were integrated, if I should use that sort of outdated term, into the program.
Yes.
And
Well, it's an important point
this is
to
the
make,
Republican
though.
Party. This is the modern Republican Party. This is the way it should look and the way it does look.
And I'll say this from firsthand experience, and I'll shut up and let Jack respond to it, obviously, but because I know the people that put this conference together, it was an
Right.
organic thing. Like, there are just more black and brown voters coming to our conferences. It wasn't like what happens in the Democrat Party, like, okay, do we have a black person? Do we have a brown person? Do we have a white person? No, I mean, it's just, that's who the party is now. It's expanding, and it's expanding rapidly.
Expanding rapidly. Listen, to your point, again, when you get into those black and brown communities, certainly I'm going to talk about taxes, but there would be also great emphasis on parental rights, because the black and brown community wants to have faith in the public education system because they use public education.
Yes.
That is their vehicle to the future. And they don't like the idea of gender ID and sexual orientation in kindergarten. None of us do.
And you were unfairly roasted for your comments when you spoke about
And yet,
these
look what's
issues.
going on in Florida now,
Oh, yeah.
right? They are the bill that's on the governor's desk says no teaching of gender ID and sexual orientation in K through third grade. Who would disagree?
Well, and this is your challenge as a candidate. I know this is something that's near and dear to your heart, Dan. They control the language, they being the left. They change the premise. All three of us, if we were in the legislature, there was a bill that said you're not allowed to talk about being gay in school if you happen to be a gay. We'd vote against that. But it's
Right.
not in the bill. All it
No.
says, as you correctly stated, is that we're not going to sexualize very young children. That's something that whether you're gay, straight, whatever, almost every American agrees with.
And
Absolutely.
They came up with the phrase, don't say gay. And that's the
Well,
phrase they came up with.
yeah.
But they have, to a large extent, made it stick. And that's why I say the language is important. And they're very good with coming up with these catchphrases.
Yeah.
Okay?
You said something really powerful at your panel that I wish Chris Russell had said to me, so you can send me a bill.
And the great thing is this is recorded.
Yes.
So when Chris tries to say, I'm just trying to get a free dinner out of him, I can be like, no,
Yeah,
that was
stealing
Jack.
stuff from Rooney again.
That's
Go
right.
ahead.
What you said was the only thing the Democratic Party has to offer the female voter is abortion. And they actually think they're giving them something.
Yes.
Okay? That is powerful. Now, it's accurate and it's powerful. And
Regardless of how you feel about that issue.
Which-
I'm pro-life. I make no apology for it. I got friends
And you
that don't
should.
agree
Right.
with me. But you know what? Even my friends that consider themselves pro-choice, they're fed up.
well, because no
Abortion-
one agrees with abortion up until the day of delivery. No one agrees with parents not knowing if their 16-year-old daughter is seeking an abortion. No one agrees with Phil Murphy inviting people from out of state to come to New Jersey to have their abortion. And by the way, if you can't pay for it, we will.
Yeah.
No one agrees with that. Everyone.
But they didn't say abortion. They termed it reproductive rights. And you see, this is how
To
they
your point about
manipulate the
language, yeah.
They manipulate the language. Reproductive rights. And then they tell you that it's a form of medical care. Okay?
The other question on your panel, Bob asked, is what's the greatest challenge of the next 5 years? And please don't take this the wrong way, because I know you have small children. You got Theodore.
Theodore?
You have one.
Well, there's another one on the way.
Well, yes, that's right.
Yes.
And mine are all in their 20s. But I will tell you what we need to stop saying in New Jersey. We need to stop saying that this is the best public school education in the country. It's not. It is for a great many students. And there are some very, very wonderfully performing public schools. But I'm telling you, we're graduating illiterate children. What a lot of people don't ever talk about is 50% of the incoming freshmen in our community colleges are taking remedial courses.
Isn't
And
that
that
stunning?
to me is the greatest threat. And every time I read about what these progressives are throwing into the public school curriculum, leaving less time for reading, writing, and math, we're doing our kids a disservice.
It breaks my heart, it really does, because when you think about the opportunity that's being lost for these kids, the opportunity that's being lost for our state and our communities, and also the money. I mean, goodness gracious, I say it all the time, but the property taxes I pay, most people pay, if all of these kids were able to graduate from, for example, what we used to call the Abbott districts, and go on and be able to get a job and support themselves and contribute to their community, I wouldn't mind as much.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening.
And the sad part, Matt, is we already have the most segregated schools in the country.
Yeah.
Phil Murphy's segregating them more. You
Yes.
know why? Because people that have had it up to here with what he's done to the public school curriculum are doing what? If they've got the means, they're pulling their kids out of the public school system and sending them to private school. That only segregates us more.
Right.
I love what you're saying about education. And again, this isn't anything that you didn't already believe, because I've heard you say this before. But you're seeing the beginnings of a message that can be taken to these communities we're talking about that should be on our side. So I don't want you to give away any state secrets, because obviously you've got a campaign, so there's a lot of tactics and strategy involved in that. But what does Jack Chitterelli do between now and 2025 to advance this goal of having a better dialogue with non-traditionally Republican groups?
Certainly going around the state and having this talk with whoever invites me, and I've been very, very fortunate in the aftermath of the election. The invitations continue to come in. I'm humbled by it. I'm out 8 nights a week. And people say, what are you doing? I said, well, I was on the campaign trail for 22 months. And then after 8 weeks at home, my wife said, get the hell out of the house. So, I want to keep Mrs. Chitterelli happy.
Well, I said that to somebody that said, oh my God, Jack.
I know that feeling, yes, I know that well.
Someone said
That's
to
why
me
I'm not home right now.
that we all know, they're like, oh my God, like Jack, like he's been running nonstop. And they said it in an admiring way. Like, God, doesn't the guy want to break? And I said, yeah, I don't know. And his wife does seem to like him.
No,
I've met her many times. She's a very lovely woman.
Lovely.
And she seems like she likes to have him around the house. So I can't really figure it out. He must just really care.
Hey,
But
listen,
not
right?
all the time. But I got to tell you, there's been moments since the election when I wanted to grab Jack and pull him aside and say, hey, Jack, the campaign's over. But really, the campaign's not over for Jack, because his campaign is not for Jack, it's for New Jersey.
Wow.
And he's passionate about New Jersey, and he won't step aside, he won't step away.
I appreciate that.
He's
Dan,
going to
but
continue to be in there.
let me talk about what it is I am doing, which I'm very excited about. I think a 44% turnout, while is excellent by historical standards, stinks. More than 1 out of 2 New Jerseyans didn't come out to vote in a gubernatorial year.
Or particularly when you consider the stakes, right?
So I've created a 501c4 called Fixing New Jersey that's dedicated to improving voter turnout. And I don't care how you vote, whether it's VBM, early voting, or election day voting, but damn it, vote. And it's really interesting how in New Jersey we have about 200,000 or 300,000 1 out of 4 voters. These are the voters that only vote in presidential years. And when you think about how the Electoral College works versus a popular vote, your vote for governor actually matters more than your vote in a presidential year because of the Electoral College.
If you live in New Jersey, that's undoubtedly true.
And the message we got to get across is your vote for mayor and your vote for governor. No disrespect, county freeholders. No disrespect. Those are important votes. So I don't want to be a ball hog here. I know you got the line for me.
I don't know why people want to talk to us. I think we're kind of boorish, but you're never boring, and I enjoy having you in the discussion, sir. You know,
Well-
I think again at Save Jersey we try to let all voices have their airing, but you know it's a lot to run for governor. It's a sacrifice, and obviously you're an ambitious guy. But to do this nonstop, you do have to have passion for your state.
I'm more determined than ever, man.
And I'm feeling the optimism from the room. I'm also feeling your optimism. You don't look like a guy that just lost a big race. You look like a guy that feels like he's on the cusp of something even bigger.
Hey, I get excited about having learned from failure, right? We learn more when we fail than when we succeed. And I got this hard-headed Italian who's just going to keep doing it until he gets it right. So,
I wouldn't know what that is.
Former Assemblyman Jack Chitterelli, gubernatorial
say hello
candidate.
to Theodore.
I will say hello to Theodore. Theodore's going to have a sister.
Oh, so I was going to ask you, we
Yes.
know the gender.
Yes, it's going to be, because we've decided to gender our child.
Is sister still an acceptable word to use?
Probably not. Facebook probably actually just killed our feed.
Wait a minute, you're not going to raise a gender-neutral child?
Shocking, I know. I know that's going to stun a lot of people. We've made that decision.
Hey, I want to thank you both for bringing balance to the public discourse in New Jersey. It's important.
We appreciate that. We're going to continue to do it until social media shuts us down.
Not going to happen. Thanks, guys.
Jack Chittarelli, great to see you, sir. Be well.
See you, buddy.
We're having fun.
That was fun. He's always special.
It's like speed dating when we do these lives, isn't it?
It's great fun, and we never know who's going to pop in, what they're going to say.
I thought I bought a giant water for myself. Oh, here it is. It fell over behind my
we have
computer.
this tiny. These are casino water bottles.
Yes.
They're tiny
It's
little
like
bottles.
it's like a shot of agua.
They say Caesars on them, but they're not imperial size. Okay.
They are not.
I don't think the Emperor Caesar would have been
No, I don't think
very
so
happy
either.
with this. But listen, it's better than nothing. You do have access to water.
That's why I had to go and get my like $30 Aquafina here.
There you go. Yeah.
It's amazing. The lines here at Harris this weekend, because there's so much going on. And I'm thinking it's a preview of what's to come. Now that President Biden has promised us bread lines.
Oh, and listen, people don't know how long they're going to have access to this stuff. Sure.
Look who's here
There's
now,
tremendous
Dan.
lines.
One of your favorites.
Oh, yes.
How are you?
Well, folks, this is extra special because not only is this somebody who's definitely a favorite of both myself and Mr. Cerrucci, also a sponsor of this year's live cast. So thank you for that. Regina
pleasure.
Egea, she is the chief cook, bottle washer, maitre d', everything at Garden State Initiative, which I hate calling it a think tank because I think people have this preconceived idea what a think tank is. And really what it is it's a resource. It's a resource for people in the Garden State that read an article about a budget, and it's written by someone that was a communications major, or worse, like me, a politics major, who doesn't really understand budgeting. And they say, I want somebody to make sense of this, to not talk down to me, to explain it, easily digestible. I will tell you, at Save Jersey, at least once a week, we probably cite GSI for something. So it's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks.
And the role of your organization, and I'm sure you don't disagree with this, is more pivotal now than ever before.
Well, we think it's going to be a great couple of years for GSI because
Regina, can you come just a little bit closer?
Sure.
Yeah, get a little closer.
we've been, building and I like what you said. It's not really a think tank; it's a policy resource center, for individuals in the state. And we've been building, a bank of pieces of research as well as opinion pieces and bringing ideas to the table to solve some of the problems that are now showing up in all the polls, right, that we're seeing, that what people are concerned about, the economy, jobs, inflation, and these are all the areas that we've been focused on and expanding from to talk about energy. As you know, we've been spending a lot of time on energy. And so I think it's going to be a real recognition of investments that have been made in GSI are going to be paying off for candidates as well as the general public and helping to translate, as you say, government speak and political speak into what does that really mean for me?
And you get both worlds because you've worked private sector, you've also worked for Governor Christie, you were his chief of staff, so you get it. You can bridge the gap for people.
I'm also a mom.
You're also a mom.
I live in this state and I grew up in this state. And so and actually at the shore, and now I live up in northern New Jersey, Morris County. So yeah, I think there's lots of perspectives that I can bring to translate, as I said, from what some people view as another language.
Sometimes it feels that way.
Why do I care? Why do I care?
And language is your thing, Dan.
I try to make it my thing, yes. I think it's pretty important. And one of the nice things about what this group does and what Regina does is they put out let us say, again, I hate to say policy papers, white papers, okay? It sounds so, overwhelming. But they put out reports that you can actually understand. They're written in clear, cogent language.
It's kind of a made-up word, but I like to call them explainers. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's something I see, for example, we got some new data in the past week concerning wage growth. So what does this information mean? What exactly is being communicated to me by these government entities that are putting out these numbers, sometimes without context? Well, it was analyzed by GSI, and what we see is that New Jersey's wage growth continues to lag the nation.
That's right.
And that's a big problem, especially when you consider our cost of living is
Exactly.
higher than every other state in the union.
Well, and what I find also to put all these numbers in context, right? What the current, particularly news media represent are just the facts, right? Oh, it got better this month, right? Either unemployment got lower,
Right.
or personal income growth increased, but not as much as everyone else. And that's the point. The more we fall behind, the harder it is going to be to get ourselves, up by the bootstraps and really start growing again at a rate which will keep us competitive with the rest of the U.S.
Yeah, I mean,
And
when it happens month after month, and you're growing at a rate that's behind
Exactly.
the rest of the country or the states that are really succeeding, it's very important to have people understand the cumulative effect of that.
Exactly.
Okay? So
Exactly.
you may be just a little bit behind this month, or so it may seem, but you're falling further and further and further behind over a period of time.
You're building a mountain you got to overcome now, as opposed to working on it on an incremental basis. So yeah, so we try to, as you say, short reports every month. We do a labor report, and our research we've shortened up. Even we do papers like 6-7 pages in English. Trying to be a little more depth explainer. But
Right.
one of the subjects I said, we talked about energy, and it's incredible the level of interest right now because we're all watching what's going on around the world and also at the gas pump. So it's really become front and center for a lot of people in New Jersey, not just about the renewables, but the whole industry now, and what does it really mean? How do I light and heat my home? And what is the BPU actually doing, by the way, with your rates? That's something that is unreported, and we have to get more attention on that.
The
because-
largest tax increase in state history, easily, if this thing comes to fruition, and the media is almost completely ignoring it. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars.
Exactly.
And they won't confirm the cost.
Exactly. They're just starting. Imagine that, right? The plan that's been implemented and awards have been made, right, to buy energy at a much higher cost than we have today, have been going on for years. And this cost study that's going to actually tell you what it might cost you in 2030, by the way, is just starting. Won't be done until next year.
And 2030 isn't that far off.
I know, right? And they're making commitments that are going to, your bill is going to show up. And all of a sudden it's going to be like, these were decisions that were made 5 years ago. That's why we have to get this really much more front and center, I think, in everything we're talking about.
Yet another example of you got to pass it to find out what's in it. We keep hearing this.
Right?
So, I mean, the Energy Master Plan, a nightmare. Let's play this game for a second. Let's say Chris Christie's still governor, or maybe you were governor, or Jack had won and was right now a new governor, which would really be something. What can a governor of New Jersey, or what should a governor of New Jersey do in the middle of an energy crisis? Obviously, there's things that are outside of their control because federalism, but what should a governor be doing in an instance like this where, we're paying an arm and a leg at the pump, it's getting harder and harder to pay your electric bills?
So I'd say a couple of things. One is, as we all know, the governor of New Jersey is the most powerful governor in the country.
Yes.
So there's incredible scope
Right.
of ability to execute on whatever strategy they want to. So I do a couple of things, I think. So one is the energy regulations about whether you can or can't use natural gas. And when you look at the other states and what's going on, and those that are really accelerating into renewables at a reckless pace, I would say, like California, what they're doing is they're saying that you can't use natural gas, you can't put more access to natural gas, and that just forces, right, this higher cost, I think just green energy that is not ready for prime time. So one is about regulations and really understanding about not cutting your nose off to spite your face. But then number two, put it in context, right? This is one more cost for the consumer in New Jersey, and we need to address the whole cost structure and what it really takes to be, survive in our state. And so I would do a couple of things, because property taxes is probably, as we all know, right, the number one issue. We need a hard, enforceable cap on property taxes.
And that's the number one thing. If you really want to help New Jerseyans, we need to put on.
And the Christie-era cab did put downward pressure
Yes.
on property taxes.
That the subsequent administration is taking credit for every year.
Gotta
But
love
yes,
that, right?
Yes, every year. Yeah, and it's creeping back up because of the relaxation of the cap. It needs to be a hard cap, though. There should not be exceptions to it.
Yeah, and I mean, there were some communities that tried to get around it, but over time, had that cap remained in place, a hard cap, we would have eventually, at some point, seen inflation and our property taxes kind of
Right.
meet somewhere in the middle. But so that was another lost opportunity here in New Jersey.
It's recoverable, though. Right. I mean, that's the one thing I always say to people while I talk about some of the things that need to change. This is totally fixable, right? You just need leadership that will understand what the message has to be and to really build the momentum behind some of these very fundamental things that we can change in our circumstances.
Now, Regina, talking about taxes and property taxes, we got the governor and the Democrats now again playing one of these shell games of offering this new property tax break. We're going to get back to the rebate game
Rebate.
again.
That's all it is.
Okay, and this is no real solution. I mean, do you regard this
Right.
as a real solution,
Absolutely.
or anywhere near a road to a real solution?
No, it doesn't get at the fundamental problem. And Matt, you even cited us, right? We did a piece over the last couple of weeks. This is a short-term, sugar high, and
Right.
it is not getting at the fundamental problem. And we all know, in fact, in fairness, a lot of the press did report this pretty well, that this has been tried before, and what happens is it's subject to future funding, and the funding gets lost, and it doesn't get at the heart of the problem, which is we need to spend less if we want to really address property taxes. And the rebate, and as well, the amount, right? I think it's 700, 600. When you think about the average property tax in New Jersey,
Yeah.
it's really kind of insulting, right?
I was going to say, I think it's an insultingly
It doesn't
small
make
amount
a
of
dent
money.
at all.
Exactly.
I mean,
It
for a
doesn't
lot of
make any
families, if you
dent
got
at
a
all.
couple children, that might be a week of daycare.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take
I mean,
it, but
it's-
it's certainly not a solution.
Right.
No.
And we need to get down to long-term restructuring, how we deliver services, the underlying costs, and just, I'd love to one day, have a longer conversation with you again, maybe on one of your, evening shows again.
Any
and really talk
time.
about that, because it's fixable, and we just really have to set our minds to get the right leaders in place. I think, as you know, like I'm nonpartisan, I really am indifferent, which party it is, but you've got to have the ideas, and we just don't see the ideas coming out of the current legislature, that who are now in the control of what bills get passed and, where the state is being driven, frankly. So I think, we need new people to really bring in other ideas.
How do we find you online?
So gardenstateinitiative.org.
Spelled out. And they're very active on Twitter as well. And like I
Facebook.
said, folks, if you've never visited GSI before, I would say GSI and the Heritage Foundation, I have them in my bookmarks. And whenever there's a complex economic issue out there in the world, always two places that I go to help me make sense of it and get some perspective and maybe see an angle of it that I'm missing. Regina, Gia, it is always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, Matt.
And thanks so much
Yeah.
for sitting down with us as always.
Always-
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we got to have that
Great to
longer
see
form
you again.
conversation soon.
Good.
Oh.
We really do.
Absolutely.
Dig into some of this stuff deeply. And give William our best.
I will, of course.
William Smith, who writes some great stuff, and then I steal it and cross-post it. What's up? Okay. Dan, I have to steal your mic.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Can we actually squeeze in the middle?
Oh, no, that's...
Let's
no,
do that.
I don't. I'll
Do that.
take a break. I can
You
take
sure?
a break. Yeah.
Okay, that works.
No, I'll take a break. No, I'm ready for a break. Believe me. Yeah.
Yes. Let's actually, we can stay live for a second. I just got to step off camera for a second, and you two come on in here.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah.
Where do these two seats? You want to sit here? This okay.
I'd like to talk about early today. Can we do that? Because I want to do that. What's that? Yeah, we're running low on time here. Because I've got a wife that wants me to come home. Inexplicably, because, oh yeah, we got to put your headset on there. Can't forget the headset. It's counterintuitive because you're sitting so close together, but you really can hear more clearly when you have the headset on. This is why we have Alex, because she gets this stuff. I don't. I'm a blogger who is terrible with technology. It's a So we need you two to introduce yourselves, because we've talked, I don't know how many people since this summit began 36 hours ago, but in some ways, you two are among the most important people here. I say that not just to flatter, but I say that because you're exactly the kind of voter that everyone here has been talking about how to energize and get on the Republican candidate's side this year. So without further ado, introduce yourself and tell us about your organization.
So I am Rilla Ballantyne, board member of NJ5PAC, which stands for New Jersey Public Health Innovation PAC. I know it's a mouthful. We came together in 2019 off the heels of the religious exemption removal bill. So we were fighting these type of bills before pre-COVID, before it was the major hot topic, and it is now. We saw that happen in the 2021 election, and we realized after 2019 that we needed to take our advocacy efforts to the next level. And we wanted to have a voice in Trenton, and we thought, what better way than to have a PAC? There was nothing like that in the state of New Jersey. We said, this is what's lacking here. And we turned to a state like Texas, who's been doing it for quite a while, and we said, show us your ways. Tell us what you did. And, Texas is a completely different beast.
It is a very different beast.
Totally different beast, but they had the same mission, the same idea, and they were gracious enough to, put their arms around us and tell us all about forming a PAC. So here we are, the first sole medical freedom PAC of its kind in the state. And, we kind of hit the ground running with the 2021 elections. We really just wanted to be the bridge between our community and legislators and give a platform to legislators to provide their message on medical freedom and where they stand. Because before 2019 or before COVID, it was a hush-hush campaign. Where do you stand? What are your beliefs, right? And it was spoken about behind closed doors. And then 2021 came around, and it was the tip of every legislators or anyone who was running for office on the tip of their tongue.
You were ahead of your time in that respect, because, look, I got my son vaccinated. I'm a vaccine guy. At the same time, I think the idea of mandating a COVID vaccine for a child and taking that choice away from a parent, there's absolutely no justification for it.
Correct.
But I think that we've, in this pandemic, almost kind of gotten a master course from our government of the danger of ceding all these decisions to a central authority, right?
Correct.
It's not that controversial for most people if we're talking about chickenpox or polio.
Sure.
But if all of a sudden we're talking about this COVID-19 pandemic, a vaccine that we still are collecting data on,
Correct.
there's not a high risk, thank God, of COVID producing a serious outcome for a child. And now the government wants to, in some ways, a great example, control your child's ability to participate in sports.
Correct.
It's waking a lot of parents up, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's about maintaining choice, and that's what we try to do. It was the sports. It's deciding there was discrimination, who's vaccinated and who's not that can go to school, or who had a quarantine. We saw a lot of things happen that was taken out of the parents' hands, and forming the PAC was to help maintain that choice and maintain the protection between the doctor and the patient. And you made a decision for your child that you were informed with your doctor to make that decision, and we just need to maintain that right.
And often it seems, especially in New Jersey, there's never an opportunity or an inclination, I should say, on the part of our elected leaders to try to persuade anybody. Phil Murphy or Judith Persicelli didn't go on TV and say, hey, I think that your kid should get the vaccine and here's why. It's here's the guidance, here's the mandate, this is what you got to do. No questions are allowed. And it's heavy-handed, and the only upside of it is that I think that it's encourage a lot of people to look at these issues with a fresh perspective. I know it's true of me too, because it's absolutely terrifying what we've seen over the course of the past 2 years.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't make you feel so secure in your government.
No.
It's just
and
not
the
a
influx of information that was not really available and was consistent to one direction and not overall just the messaging on what was happening.
But you found some receptive legislators. I
Yes,
mean, obviously
we
the
did.
majority party is not necessarily that interested in what you have to say all the time.
Well,
I saw Mike Testa back there a little while ago. He's certainly an exception to the rules, a Republican. I know that you've had a lot of interaction with him. I think
Correct.
you interviewed Jack Chittarelli.
We did.
During the campaign?
We endorsed 79 candidates last election cycle. Jack was our first endorsement right out of the primaries, and out of those 79 candidates, 44 of them took seat. Our
good.
political action committee was the only political action committee to get behind Ed Durr for his election, so that was significant as well. And it was a tremendous ride to see so many positions taken.
Have you
and this at
found
the forefront.
you've been getting a different reception after the election than you were before? Now that we've gone through COVID, now that you've had some electoral victories, or more Republicans in particular willing to talk to you guys about these issues?
Yes, we've broken the doors open with Republicans and slowly with some Democrats as well that didn't want to speak to us before. We're no longer a fringe movement. This is not a vaccine issue, an anti-vaccine, pro-vaccine issue. This is maintaining your bodily autonomy and your right to make a decision for yourself and for your child. And that has always been the case. Prior to COVID, since we were fighting in Trenton in 2019, we said when we message, eventually everyone has a line in the sand, Matt. And it might be different for you and I, right? And that's what we need people to realize. You might be comfortable with COVID vaccine 1, COVID vaccine 2, and you see so many people who are okay with that. And then the booster came along, and they said, well, I'm not okay with that.
Right.
So we said we're fighting for you, even though you may not realize it yet. Because the whole crew, we had people who weren't with us that got the first shot, the second shot, and now when they're required to get the booster, they said, "Okay,
That was their-
that was
the
my
limits of
line
their
in the sand."
tolerance.
Exactly.
Well, I like that you foster a conversation, because I will say this again, as somebody who is very sympathetic to your cause, but like you said, we may disagree on certain
Sure.
vaccines. Part of the problem with the parental choice movement up until recently has been there has been a lot of junk science out there that's been peddled by certain elements. And I've always thought that the way you go about it is the better way. We're here to have a conversation. We all agree we want to live in a free country. We all agree that we're disturbed by what we're seeing on TV. Let's have a discussion about it. And I know that, for example, Jack Chittarelli, I think he changed part of his, I shouldn't say he changed. You brought to the forefront an issue that he needed to digest and confront, which is what do we do about parents' concerns in this arena? And he had a proposal. He wanted to form kind of a hybrid advisory panel that would weigh in on these issues. So you impacted a gubernatorial election.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
that's
Jack
big.
really strengthens his message with medical freedom, and our community wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, and which is why we created such a, I don't want to say rigid, but robust endorsement process, because we couldn't say Felicia and Rula from NJ5 PAC think Jack is great. That no longer cut it. We have a very skeptical community who need to hear it. So we have an endorsement process which includes a survey with very thorough questions about where they stand on these particular issues. So when our community sees NJ5 PAC endorsed, they know that they have been vetted and went through and asked the hard questions, because they are hard questions. They're not easy questions, and we need to know really where they stand, and if when in office they're true to the responses they gave to us. So yes, back to your original question, we've seen these people more open to this conversation, and us really making this a constitutional issue, a freedom issue, a human rights issue. No longer a vaccine, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine discussion. So we want to lead with that foot. We're not the tinfoil hat wearing crazy, that they wanted to, and that was a way to dehumanize us and to really, poo-poo our concerns. And through COVID, I guess if there's any silver lining is that they weren't able to kind of contain that bubble or say this is just some fringe movement. It was a lot.
It wasn't a hypothetical anymore.
It
was
wasn't-
out there
yes.
in the open for everyone to see, so they They couldn't deny anymore. Well,
Correct.
we're living in interesting times, and it's in
Yes.
large part due to the work that you're doing. How do we find you guys online and get more information if we want to get involved?
Sure. We're on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, everything, you name it. We actually, on YouTube, you can go and you can see all of our endorsement interviews and get to know the candidates. It's kind of like a meet and greet sort of platform. And then our website is njphipac.org. That's NJ Public Health Innovation Political Action Committee. As Rula mentioned, it's a mouthful, but it's Public Health Innovation. We didn't want to put vaccine into the title or name because this is a conversation about public health and innovating public health. And we really believe that when each individual is honored, then you establish public health. It's about focusing on our bio-individualities and working out with each individual, as we've mentioned. And that's what we aspire to do, is work with legislators to create good policy and protecting and strengthening health freedom and developing public health.
And
Keep
moving
pushing.
away from a one-size-fits-all mentality, because as we saw for COVID, that didn't work out.
Did not work
It
very
did not
well.
work out. We could see that we're vulnerable. We're a vulnerable population. So what can we do in our state, in our country, outside of vaccines and masks? That's the true question. We do have a public health crisis, but how do we realize through COVID that we're very vulnerable? And how can we cultivate true public health outside of, the parameters of vaccines and masks?
That's the way science is going. If you look at science in the medical world, it's going towards epigenetics and
Individualized
healthcare. So it's in line. And like Rula said, it's not some fringe group wearing tinfoiling hats. We're parents. We know our children. We respect our communities. We respect our families, and we want to just do what's right for them.
It's an important conversation. Let's keep it
Yes.
going.
Thank you for
Thanks so
having
much for
us.
stopping by and
Yes,
filling us in
appreciate it.
Of course.
on the state of
So
things. And
great.
definitely,
Yes.
folks, head over to the website. Like they said, it's a mouthful, but it's a big topic. So it's one we need to address, and it's one we need to take seriously, and I think it's going to be a huge issue again in
and
2022.
Listen, I know the masks are off, but not necessarily going away. And please follow us and stay connected because it's an uphill battle still.
No doubt about it, folks. Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure. And folks, we are officially out of time. It has been an absolute pleasure to be with you. I am Matt Roney from the New Jersey Leadership Summit. We will repost many of our videos so you can digest them a little bit at a time because we talked to a lot of folks this weekend. And make sure you continue to keep up with us at SaveJersey.com. I am Matt Rooney, signing off from Atlantic City. See you again soon, guys.